Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got another of our interviews with executives of junior mining companies. In this case, it's Kenorland, run by Zach Flood. And I made this company a pick a couple years ago, and they've really delivered with the drilling on especially the Frotet project, which is the one that got me all excited. Zach, great job on your recent results.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
thanks for having us, man.
The headline there is a attention getter, 138.74 grams per ton of gold over 3.15 meters and a bunch of other nice hits as well.
Yep, the system up there is getting a lot bigger, and I think we were pretty bold in terms of the step outs and the deeper drilling, and it paid off this round. So it's good to see it.
When I first started talking with you, Zach, we did an interview, and I remember you had only tagged into, I think at that point, maybe a couple epithermal veins. And a few things sort of stood out to me was that you had nice continuity along strike, and it was starting to look like it was developing nicely at depth. And then another big thing is in these epithermal veins, often you find a cluster, and some of those veins can be blind. And you guys have had a very good success in expanding on the known veins at that time, and then finding more and lots of this high grade.
Yeah, it's it's not, I'm not sure if it's necessarily epithermal, but definitely orogenic, but still looking at narrow high grade quartz veins hosted in shear zone. So it is quite structural in terms of the setting. And you're right, I think the first time we talked was when we were drilling on the R1, which was basically just the first structure that we started to define. And over the last 2 years, that's turned into, the R2, R3, R4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we've found a bunch of more veins as well. I'm not sure what number we're on. We're going to come out with an updated geologic model in the next round of assay results. We'll be presenting that. And but there's certainly 10 plus high grade veins that you can trace over 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers of strike, and now we've tagged them down to depths over 1,000 meters vertical. So certainly the footprint is there. It looks like a very big gold system. We continually hit very, very high grades, ounce per ton, plus grades in the system are not uncommon at all. So yeah, it's an exciting one, and this was a total grassroots discovery that we made in 2020 there. So it's fairly recent, fairly new in that sense. And I know you've recognized it. I'm not sure if the rest of the market has yet, but
it's only a matter of time, Zach. I've often been known to get in early on the first drill hole or two and spot things that would evolve, and I definitely think you guys got something tremendous there.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And yeah, it does take time for these things to be recognized. It's not a straight path in any discovery, especially a narrow vein system as well. I think that requires quite a lot of drilling to really kind of put the pieces together. It's not like a porphyry system where you can just drill one or like say 10 holes or something and everyone knows how big it is, right? And that you have hundreds of meters of mineralization. Here it's you really just got to step out and step down and keep kind of proving the scale. But yeah, every program so far is delivered, so expect
now good results. You said that you don't know if it's a epithermal or orogenic, and the thickness of the zone suggests to me that it's either an orogenic system or epithermal with stacked boiling zones. Do you have any evidence that in the textures of the core in the quartz is that it's a long-lived epithermal system, or does it look more like an orogenic quartz system?
I'm certain it's an orogenic gold system. We've dated some of the mineralization in the actual veins, and it lines up with kind of the D2 deformation events in the region. There is potentially an early gold event, however, in the actual intrusion that hosts these veins. We see a lot of low grade, really low grade, but highly anomalous background gold in the actual intrusion itself, with some disseminated pyrite within that too, away from the structures. So what our kind of working hypothesis is that you could have had this enriched intrusion early on, and then later it was that came up inside of a deformation zone, yeah, and then it was sheared, cracked, and you had a lot of remobilization. And we do see multiple mineralizing events. That's typically how you can end up with really, really high grade gold is when you're kind of have overprinting events, and you see kind of a pyrite, or well, we've done a sulfide study with Sumitomo, and you can see these various fluids that carry different metals, pyrite, chalcopyrite. The tellurides is when you see really, really high grade golds, like hundreds of grams per ton. So it's certainly a complex system in that sense, and long lived, and I think that's it's a really good thing to see that.
Now, a couple things about orogenic gold systems that the audience might not be aware of, but these are structurally controlled and have these deep cracks in the earth, faults that allow those metals bearing fluids to make their way up to surface. And sometimes you can go very deep into these systems, like at Red Lake, they were over 1,000 meters before they got into the bonanza stuff, and that continued for another 1,000 meters. So that's something to be aware of. The another thing I watch for is continuity of that high grade along strike and at depth. And then my third point, I had another point. Let's talk about those to start. I'll remember it soon.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I might actually bring up a map here so we can kind of see what we're talking about, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, yes, the other thing was, now I remember. There's often in these kind of systems a transition from fine grain gold to coarse grain gold as you get closer to the heat engine. Are you seeing are you seeing VG in the core, or is it still pretty fine grain stuff?
There's not a huge amount of visible gold in the system, and that's typically not where we see the highest grades either. When we see the gold, the tellurides, which are like these silver minerals, that's typically when we're seeing the ultra high grade gold, and there is the occasional visible gold that hangs out around that. But it's a unique system in that sense, I think, and it obviously, all orogenic systems are typically going to display some nuggety effects. That there's certainly the case here where we'll drill one hole and it'll be high grade, like in the 5 to 10 grams, and then we'll step over 20, 30 meters or 50 meters, and you see hundreds of grams per ton gold. So but generally all of the veins are running consistently, I would term high grade 5 grams plus, but we do see this spectacular high grade gold kind of clustering now along some areas of the R1 structure and down on R2.
When we first started talking about R1, you were just in that sort of central part of the vein, and you had kicks of high grade. And I noticed that it looked like there was good continuity along strike, and that, made me speculate that maybe it would continue deeper.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. So this is the R1. I'm not sure if hopefully you can see the pointer.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the R1 vein. So the discovery hole 7 went into this in 2020. And it took us a couple programs to even understand that it's striking east-west and dipping slightly to the north. And so we really focused on this R1, but over time we started drilling some deeper holes to the south, and that's when we found the R5, R6, R7, R8. That was just last year, actually.
And Zach, how did you find those parallel veins or zones? Was it through following alteration, or were they blind? How did you tag those?
It was just drilling deeper. So I'll go to the next image in this press release. That's a cross section of the whole system looking towards the right hand side of the page here, where you can see yeah, here we go. So this is a cross section of the entire Renault gold system. You can see the depth marks here. So this is the 500-meter mark. Now we've got hits to over 1 kilometer depth. You have the CN tower for scale for the Canadians in the audience. But the R1 was up here. And so initially we were drilling enough meterage to get through the R1, and we were trying to see how continuous that is, striking east-west and down dip. And we noticed in some of that drilling that we did tag another vein that really wasn't part of the R1. It was past the R1. And so that today is called the R5. And then during that program, this was winter last year, we pushed a few holes really kind of just beyond the R1 to see what else was there. And then all of a sudden, we hit the R5, the R6, R7, R8 veins. Which
and
was
it's
very,
like
very
a
exciting.
stacked zones there.
Exactly. So it's just kind of these sub-parallel vein structures stacked, maybe 50 plus meters, 50 to 100 meters apart from each other. And then this year was when we said, hey, this is, we understand the geologic model now, and it's quite repetitive in terms of the presence of these veins. So why don't we try to drill, much deeper and put some holes in that are 800, 900, 1,000 meters for downhole, like in terms of depth, and see if there's additional veins. And then sure enough, now we've intersected, that was kind of these deeper holes out here to the very south. And you can see we tagged a number of structures along here that aren't really defined until we update the model, but hole 162.
You might just be at the top of those zones.
Yeah, exactly. So we drilled really 3 holes that went down to 1,000 meters vertical depth, and they're pretty wide spaced. And all of those holes intersected new vein structures. We had hole 162, which hit 17.5 meters at 1.45 grams per ton, 6.25 meters at 2.29 grams per ton, 2 meters at 5.25, and then about 600 maybe 500 meters to the west is hole 159, this other deep hole, and this hit much higher grades, 4.75
Wow.
at 5.97, including half a meter at 46 grams, and then 159 hit 1.2 meters at 55.7 grams per ton. And so this is, I think, just showing you, like, we don't expect when you drill a hole into the middle of nowhere where you have no information to hit, the highest grades. You just want to hit the structure. And I think defining the structure is your first goal. And then as you work along that structure, you'll find the higher grade sections. But this hole 159, I think, demonstrated, like, even out there in the middle of nowhere, we're hitting economic grades in the first holes down into these veins. So
yeah, because that's a aggressive move over there to I guess it's the east.
yeah, I'll if I flip back to this plan.
Hold on, before you do that, Zach, there was a couple of things that stood out to me.
Okay.
I see stacked zones. I see good continuity of the high grade to bonanza grade. And it looks like that, there should be more of those zones. And as you go deeper, there's a chance that they could all come together.
Potentially, but I think really, the veins are typically, they're the most well-defined within the intrusion itself. And so you could think of the intrusion as this, amorphous kind of almost pipe-like body that goes down to depth, and these veins just kind of cut across it pretty repetitively. So, not necessarily looking for any particular vein to dip, down to the center of Earth, but rather, finding more of these parallel veins within that intrusive
To
complex.
all keep going together. Yeah. Wow.
That's how we're going to build. So one analog that we always always point to in terms of geometry, at least, is Sigma Lamaque, or the Lamaque deposit, where you have this pipe on the Cadillac Larder Lake Fault, this intrusive pipe basically within the sediments, and that's a rigid body, and that cracks along the deformation zone. And you have, you know, the same thing, these parallel or subparallel stacked veins, and some of them carrying, you know, each individual vein carrying hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold. So it's a great way to, I think, add a lot of ounces quickly, is just discovering additional veins rather than just drilling any one vein down to 2 kilometers deep.
And then keep following them. Gotcha.
Yeah, like each of these here, 159 and 162, these veins line up pretty well. So we suspect they're the same orientation or similar orientation as the R1, R5, R6, R7. So steeply dipping to the north and striking east-west.
And it's kind of interesting there that you only have about 25, 30 meters and you're already seeing higher grade just in that little bit deeper.
Yeah, exactly. So these are the deep holes here that I was pointing to on the cross section. So you have hole 159, 162, and then this hole here, which was the last hole of the program that we drilled down to 1,600 meters, and we haven't released assays yet for that one. But this here is, you know, probably 300 plus meters between these two holes, and you're seeing the structures line up perfectly. So yeah, the system's really well behaved in terms of geometry, you know, and as we start to infill these zones, I'd expect, you know, similar distribution of grade as we see in the R1 and R2 and all these other ones. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. It's definitely, I think, kind of increased the potential quite significantly, finding the additional veins.
Yeah, that gotta be, that's a bit of an understatement there. I don't think the market really understands it yet, but you keep pushing that further down. And like, I also noticed that where you're open, you've got pretty good constraints inside the drill holes, and then it just looks like you just need to keep plugging some holes along or down dip along that.
Yeah. I mean, we drilled a number of holes that go deeper, and again, we're going to be releasing a lot of about half the results from that last program. We drilled over 15 holes, a total of 13,000 meters. I think we put out 6 of them in this release, so we have the other half coming out. And with that, we'll update the geologic model. On this section, you can see the existing geologic model where you see the vein shapes that we've modeled in pink here. So that whole model will be updated, and I'm sure we'll see additional solids for more veins coming down here as well.
Wow. So where to next on this particular project?
So the next drill program is planned for the summer this year. There's going to be another 10,000 meters or so. In the summer, we're kind of constrained to drilling off of the land, whereas that winter program was all ice drilling. So we got to really get out in the middle of the lake here and plan the deep holes from that. But we will be drilling more from land. So I suspect there's going to be some pads out here that we can follow up on these deeper hits, do some step outs on those, and maybe even push some holes a little bit deeper. Same with over here on the eastern side of the system. We'll be following up on these additional vein discoveries there. And
then over at R2, it looks like you got reason to believe that could get even wider.
Yeah, R2 is, you know, we kind of lost it coming out here to the west. Once you get out of that pink blob is the diorite body, and like I mentioned, the vein formation is somewhat, it's more well behaved and sort of constrained to the diorite intrusion, that pink blob. And that whole blob is, like I mentioned, a pipe-like body, and it does plunge sort of down to the east and the southeast really steeply. So we're kind of chasing things actually towards the east underneath the volcanics, as opposed to the west side. Yeah. And we are getting hits underneath, you know, where there's mapped volcanics on surface, we're drilling underneath that and finding that there is diorite down there. There are veins down there. So we do believe the system kind of continues underneath those rocks to the east. So it's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of room, and there's a huge amount of strike here now. I mean, we think the R2 and R3 will sort of connect with the R5, 6, 7, 8 vein structures, and that's giving you over almost 2 kilometers, 1.8 kilometers of strike from one end to the other on multiple vein sets. You know, we already have over a kilometer on R1.
Does that strike give you some indications of how deep you can go, the system?
Like I said, the system's really, I think the deeper we follow that intrusive, we're going to keep finding these parallel vein structures. So that's definitely, I think the big blue sky is going to be continuing to drill at depth, following that intrusive body. But again, we've hit veins over 1,000 meters deep, and there's no real reason why they don't continue beyond that.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. So, pending results, more drilling this summer, which will probably lead you into the fall and the winter program.
Yep, and we'll be doing some additional exploration further out to the east. We think that the main controlling regional structure here is this big east-west shear zone that cuts across sort of the entire intrusive complex, and it does continue to the east, and there are some anomalous geochemical samples from going way back a couple of years ago from the initial till sampling programs we've done out there. And so part of the summer program is going to be more surface work following up on that, and then detailed geophysics, and we'll be drilling these more brownfields styles of targets next winter, probably.
I think on your news release, you have sort of that regional stuff as well. And so I was quite interested, if you go down a little further.
Yeah, this one.
There. So in the Renault gold discovery area, you've got quite a concentration of mineralization at the surface there. It looks like to the north and west, mainly north, you've got another area of interest up in the top. Yeah, the top
this one here.
Yeah, that's another one. And then even over to the east somewhat, you've got a little bit of life there as well. So
these are all regional areas that there will be some work done out here as well at Laforge, which is a pretty interesting target area. There's a big quartz pegmatite out there, and you have these kind of rare earth signatures coming out of the till there. So that's a whole different conversation. And then there's just north of us at Renault is the Chantillon area. So there is a huge field of altered boulders and sulfidized boulders with some decent grades, and that's definitely a regional target we'll follow up on. This area along the Troilus trend is called Cressida. There's definitely, we did drill that actually last summer and intersected some pretty decent gold grades, sort of 1 to 2 grams over 5 to 10 meters sort of thing. Nothing spectacular, but certainly shows that whole Troilus trend still continues down to the south. And
this is all of this claims are part of the Sumitomo joint venture?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But what we're really interested in, I think, is going to be down here, stepping out to the east, and you can see this big east-west structure in the lake there. The DEM topography follows that, and so there's a good chance that there's more mineralization right near Renault itself. So we'll be following up on that aggressively this summer for surface work, and then hopefully diamond drilling next winter.
Wow. And well, I think we covered that part of your story pretty good. I'm also quite impressed with your business model. I've only ever featured one company in my report that was a prospect generator, which was Virginia, my friend Andre Fund. And I get a lot of feel like, that's you guys are following a similar path to a young Virginia.
Yeah, I know that I wasn't around during that era, but certainly I know the stories, and I know Andre, and Andre was actually one of the initial shareholders into Kenorland, going all the way back to 2016. So I've definitely kept in touch with him. You know, I think the key with Virginia was that they had such a great exploration team. You know, they had probably one of the best exploration teams in North America.
And they were able to, the Geological Survey of Quebec is tremendous. And they tapped into all that data. And they were really good at filtering out that data to find quality. And yeah, Andre's a brilliant guy with an awesome team during the Virginia days.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something we've really focused on here at Kenorland, is building a really amazing team that works well together. Everyone's very passionate about exploration and very knowledgeable about different types of mineral systems and you know, different levels of understanding with regards to these districts all over North America. So we're really able to go anywhere that we kind of choose and look at all sorts of types of systems. And that's why we're active in Quebec and Ontario and Manitoba and British Columbia and Alaska. We're sort of agnostic in terms of, you know, jurisdiction and commodity. It's really looking for opportunities to make new mineral discoveries. That's what we're entirely focused on, is finding new systems out there and exploring areas that we think are less explored than others. That's the opportunity. And this is, you know, I always point to Renault as a perfect example, where we looked at the Frotet Evans Belt, and although people had considered it heavily prospected, we could see through the public data that, like, there wasn't really any big till survey there. There was lakes, there was some systematic lake sediment sampling in the 70s and 80s, and definitely there was a lot of prospecting. But in general, it hadn't seen that really kind of systematic and disciplined approach, I think, that Kenorland's known for. And sure enough, we turned up the Renault gold discovery 5 kilometers off the Route du Nord. I mean, you can drive a Honda Civic into the camp there, down an existing logging road right over the boulder field. So if we can find something like this here, then it's almost, I'd say, you know, there's a really good chance of us finding additional systems out there where people have overlooked.
That's sort of the nature of the business, you know. That's looking at where areas that were known and really applying more thorough and modern technology to those areas to make new discoveries.
Exactly. That's completely the approach, is go in and try something different, you know, and just do it on a big scale.
Sometimes it's only looking at it with a different set of eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we come in, you know, with pretty fresh eyes. Like, none of us had ever worked in Quebec, and then we come in, and 2 years later we make this big gold discovery. And it was just, I think, just our approach rather than our experiences in the province that led us there.
So, as for my audience, a prospect generator, they go out, they do this initial work on the surface, sometimes a few drill holes, but mostly surface work and compiling data, and then they take that to majors and try to bring in a major. And in the Frotet scenario, they brought in Sumitomo. But you've got a whole portfolio of other assets as well, Zach.
Yeah, we're working with a number of major mining companies. Well, Sumitomo, we work with on 3 different projects in Quebec. We also work with Centerra Gold in the southern Abitibi, Newmont in the northern Abitibi. We're working with Antofagasta on our copper project in Alaska. And, you know, previously we had worked with Barrick and Freeport. And so, yeah, we've definitely, you know, partnered with a number of these big companies, and they're great to work with. You know, I think we bring something to the table, which is we have a dynamic exploration team that can focus on greenfields. You know, they typically don't have those types of groups, and they're not as nimble to go out and stake ground and run these kind of early stage programs. So it's really a symbiotic kind of relationship. The market
Well,
doesn't always love it because you end up with, minority interest in some of these things. But again, we're not putting up, our capital to go do really, really high risk exploration. And over the lifespan of Kenorland, by the end of this year, we'll have spent about $100 million on exploration, on early stage exploration. And 75% of that or more, maybe 80% has been from the third parties, from our partners. So it's it's a very expensive game. It's very high risk, and not every company is going to make it, but this model allows us to carry out a lot more exploration
got a lot of
than any
swings
other
at the
companies.
bat.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Well, a couple things there speaks volumes about the quality of your team. That one is that you're able to attract major mining companies from your initial work to be your partners. But something else that maybe people aren't aware of is that they also let you be the operator, and then you get income from the operating the exploration of those projects. So it helps with your share structure.
That's a really, really great point too. And that is our main source of revenue is the management fees. And this year, I think we're projecting to bring in around $3 to $3.5 million in management fees. And so that covers almost or probably completely our G&A, even though we do have a big exploration team, and our G&A is probably bigger than most companies because of the size of the technical team required to manage all this exploration. But you offset that with the operator fee. So it's this year we're actually paying taxes to the Canadian government. So over the lifespan of our company, we've actually made money. We're profitable.
That's
not many companies can say that.
That's pretty important, because these days, I got into the business in my late 20s. I've been doing this now for 30 years. And when I came in, there was about a 10 years, 15 years ahead of me. There wasn't a lot of people that got into the business, and 4 or 5 years after me, not a lot of people got into the business. So there's this lost generation. I'm part of the lost generation. And that makes for putting together teams very difficult. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And by doing the way you guys are doing, you're able to keep a really strong team together. And I used to say to Andre, I said, Andre, you run your company like a major junior, I used to say. And I get that same sense from the way you guys operate.
Yeah, I think keeping the team together is really important. And I think geologists, they need to, or at least if you're an explorationist and you like early stage, it's a lot of companies start, stop, they're not able to have that consistent flow of exploration, that pipeline, that always keeps geologists excited, excited to come into work every day and see what the data shows on this and what targets are going to be generated there. So I think our ability to scale the company large enough to where we have this continual flow of exploration helps retain, I think, like really solid geologists and explorationists, because there's just, there's never a dull moment, or there's never something, never a quiet period where we're kind of sitting around waiting for, something to happen. It's always happening.
I got a big smile on my face, because it reminds me of when I first got into the business in the 1990s. I worked with a big geological consulting firm that also had a couple juniors. We'd sit at the boardroom table for lunch together and talk about the various different projects that the team was working on. And it's a lot of fun to be in that environment. And I learned a lot, and I'm sure you do, and your team does as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't imagine learning more, than we have in Kenorland after managing $100 million of exploration in the early stage. It's been quite an exciting adventure so far.
That old truth machine teaches you a lot.
Yeah, it humbles you.
Well, before we close, the other projects, you got some stuff pending on that? What are your highlight of your portfolio?
Yeah, so we did a maiden drill program. We carried that out at Shabistawan, which is the project we have with Newmont in the northern Abitibi. So keep an eye out for results on that in the next couple weeks. And then we're just about to start up the drill program up in Alaska on our copper porphyry project that we have partnered with Antofagasta on. And so that's going to be about 4,500 meters of drilling up there. And then drilling will kick off again at Frotet later this summer. And we're doing a bunch of bigger kind of geochem surveys and geophysics on our other projects to kind of advance those to drill target, which, we'll see come into the fold next year as well. So there's, like I said, kind of never a dull moment. You're always gonna, there's always going to be new drill results coming out on projects, new drill targets being developed, and maiden drill programs, and yeah, lots going on. So it'll be an exciting year again.
A lot of news flow.
Should be pretty consistent.
Well, we'll have to do this again, Zach. I'm going to close it off, and we can have a chat at the other end.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So, I don't throw comments like, the similarities that I'm seeing between a young Virginia Gold and Kenorland around very easily. I think I can make those comments because I knew Andre before he made his big discoveries. So I kind of watched the whole evolution and of Virginia and its various different iterations of success. And they followed the same model that Kenorland does: strong science, strong team, great projects that attract major mining companies. And I think Kenorland has a great future. And even some of the assets that don't get recognized, I recognize. The one about being able to put a team together and also bring the money in from being the manager of the project, management fees, is why they can do that. So having a strong exploration team is something that the major mining companies don't have. Even a lot of exploration companies, big exploration companies, don't have. So Kenorland has a modest valuation of 45 million Canadian. Strong team, great assets, big partners. And those partners trust them to do the work the right way. So I think these all things add up to a company with the potential for a much higher valuation. Stay tuned for more news. Do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.